The co-founder of macro business, Stephen Van Onselen, has been quoted as saying that China is conning the world on net zero in what he says is a controversial take. I don't know that it is that controversial. Stephen Van Onselen joins us now. G'day, Leith.
G'day, Stephen. How are you?
Very well. So explain this to me. How are we being conned on net zero by China?
Yeah, look, first of all, I want to say, I think all of us can agree that we want to live in a cleaner world. So we want cleaner air, we want less pollution, that sort of thing. But, residents in the Western world, so including Australia, we're being told that we've got to stop burning fossil fuels like coal and gas to stop climate change. And as a result, we're all closing down our cheap, reliable base load power, which is driving up energy costs and has contributed to the structural decline in our manufacturing sectors. So this is happening right across Europe, pretty much everywhere, but Australia as well. And Australia's manufacturing sector is the smallest in the OECD, so smallest in the advanced world, it's about 5% of GDP. Just last year, just to show how dire it is, we lost our last plastics manufacturer, Cleanos, to high energy prices. We've lost a whole bunch of other manufacturers. We're shrinking. And I argue that China is the largest beneficiary of the West's net zero policy. So what's happening is the West is basically shutting down its cheap, reliable power, its fossil fuel-based power for renewables. It's sending its manufacturing across to China, who's then burning oodles of fossil fuels instead, and basically taking over the world's manufacturing and doing it in a dirtier way than the West. Now, just to put some numbers around this, China accounted for 31.5% of the world's carbon emissions in 2023, according to Our World in Data, which you can go and check out for yourself. And its emissions are growing at a near exponential rate. So China's emissions are going up in a straight line, whereas the Western world's emissions are actually falling. China has accounted for nearly 2/3 of the growth in the world's carbon emissions since 2000. So China is driving the carbon emissions globally. China is the largest importer of coal and gas in the world, much of which comes from Australia. China also is the largest coal producer and user in the world. So China digs up heaps of coal. It's adding coal mines every single year. It's also adding coal-fired electricity generation every single year. It's burning more and more coal. And China, in fact, burns 30% more coal in the world than the rest of the world combined. So the world's coal use is rising out of China. Now, China has, according to Statista, 1,161 coal-fired power plants. It's adding to those plants every single year. So it's building more and more coal-fired power plants. It's burned 50% more coal last year than it did a decade before.
Wow.
Meanwhile, Australia has 18 coal-fired power plants, and we've been told that we've got to shut those down.
But is China conning us, or are we conning ourselves?
Well, yeah. Look, I mean, I guess you could argue both ways. I mean, China's sort of presented itself as a renewable superpower, and it's building out all these renewables. And it's doing the electric car revolution, all this sort of stuff. But if you actually look at the emissions, the world's emissions are being driven by China. The growth in the world's emissions. And meanwhile, the Western world's basically cutting back. We're shutting down our manufacturing because of high energy prices. And we're effectively just setting that to China to manufacture instead and to burn fossil fuels instead of us. And I'd argue that the world could be a cleaner place if we literally just burnt our own fossil fuels and we built our own manufacturing instead of China, because we've got higher environmental controls. And also our emissions per unit of GDP, so per unit of output, are significantly lower than China. So China's actually less efficient. And we're effectively just playing a game of whack-a-mole where we're just shifting the emissions over to China. We're giving ourselves a higher cost of living. We're driving up inflation, and we're giving ourselves less diversified economies ultimately, which is not what you want.
So, Leith, the maths are pretty simple here. I mean, we know how many coal-fired power stations China's got. We know how many they're building. We know what their emissions are. We know how much coal we're exporting there. We know that our energy prices are going up, and they are in most other parts of the world too. And, some parts of Europe are starting to wake up to it. But we seem to still try to convince ourselves that what we're doing is going to bring energy prices down and make electricity cheaper, when clearly it's not.
No, absolutely not. And as I said, China's got 65 times as many coal-fired power plants as us. And look, the fact of the matter is that the government wants to lie to you and say to you that just basically, cutting down reliable baseload power, which we've had for generations, which delivered cheap energy prices for generations, is somehow going to make your electricity bills come down. It's actually not true. Because, I'm not against renewables, but the fact of the matter is there is a massive transmission cost to building out these renewables, and those costs get put onto your bills.
So in your view, is this driven purely by ideology? Because, I mean, there can't be, some of our politicians are pretty stupid, but I mean, they can't be that stupid to not see what's really going on.
Oh, absolutely, it's ideology. And the fact of the matter is, look, if we're going to do this net zero thing, all countries need to be involved. You can't have the West doing it, but not China, for example. And all we're doing, as I said, we're basically giving ourselves more expensive energy, and then we're just shifting. In Australia's case, we're being told we're not allowed to burn our own gas, we're not allowed to burn our own coal, but then we're putting that same gas and coal on a ship to China to burn in our place, which just to me makes no sense. And then at the same time, we're then shrinking the West is shrinking their manufacturing bases, and then that manufacturing is going over to China, which is cheaper energy and is burning the fossil fuels anyway, which to me just seems like whack-a-mole. And also then you've got the added freight of having to ship all the manufacturers from China instead of just building it here. So to me, it just makes no sense.
It's absolutely extraordinary. Leith, good to talk to you this morning.
Yeah, thanks, Stephen. Anytime.
All the best. Leith Van Onselen, co-founder of Macro Business. I mean, when you look at the figures and you lay it out like that, you think, how have we gotten ourselves into this situation where the maths is obvious to everybody else except us and the people who are supposed to be running the show here? It's frightening, isn't it?